Welcome to the video presentation of Documenting Data Production Processes, a Participatory Approach for Data Work. This is a paper co-authored by my amazing collaborators Tianlin Yang, Adriana Alvarado Garcia, Julian Posada, Sonia Wang, Mark Paul, Alex Hanna, and me, Milagros Miceli. In this paper, we report on 2.5 years engaging with data workers through participatory design. With the data workers, we reimagine documentation as a tool designed to preserve their voices, foster reflexivity in data production processes, and ultimately open a path for workers to intervene in production processes. But before we delve deeper into this work, let us first discuss what documentation actually is and why research has developed frameworks to document machine learning datasets. The availability of data plays a key role in orienting the goals, values, and research agendas of the AI community, because in the end, data is the fuel of AI. The turn towards machine learning techniques that prioritize scale has consequently created a voracious demand for more, cheaper, and increasingly differentiated data to develop and train increasingly larger models. What the hype around AI and data-driven technologies often conceals is that behind every model, there is an army of workers producing data day in, day out. To reduce costs and scale data production, machine learning companies and research organizations often outsource data work through crowdsourcing platforms and business process outsourcing companies, or short BPOs. The data workers are in charge of the collection, curation, classification, labeling, and verification of data that is used to train and validate machine learning systems. Without their labor, the AI industry wouldn't be able to scale production. However, this work is often disregarded as low skill or even rendered invisible. The problem is that once tasks such as data collection and labeling are rendered invisible, then the dataset's composition, operating characteristics, collection process, and labeling taxonomies are obscured, and the dataset becomes a black box. To address this problem and preserve datasets' characteristics with the aim of understanding models' behavior and anticipating ethical issues, research has proposed a series of frameworks for documenting datasets. Most of these frameworks aim at standardizing dataset documentation and propose standardized checklists or questionnaires to register datasets' motivation, composition, collection process, and recommended uses. One of the most salient examples is datasheets for datasets, the groundbreaking documentation framework authored by Timnit Gebru et al. These forms of documentation are very useful for providing a snapshot of a dataset's state at a given moment. Still, one challenge that persists is that datasets are living artifacts that evolve and change over time. Moreover, their production involves actors with varying amount of decision-making power. Datasets are mostly produced within hierarchical structures where machine learning practitioners outsource task instructions that are followed by data workers who are often located in poor regions of the world and work under very precarious labor conditions. These power imbalances in the service relationship that connects data workers and requesters shape datasets decisively. But the problem is that they remain undocumented and mostly unreflected. In this paper, we build on previous research on data documentation, but propose a shift of perspective, from documenting datasets to documenting the production process in which datasets are created. We understand documentation as a tool, but also as the process of making explicit the context, actors, and practices comprising machine learning data work, as well as the relationship among these elements. We engaged in a participatory design process with data workers at two business process outsourcing companies located in Argentina and Bulgaria. The participatory engagement went on for 2.5 years and comprised many iterations, including interviews, discussions, and co-design workshops. Together with the data workers, we came up with a series of design considerations for documenting data production processes and a first prototype. Those design considerations were oriented towards two main goals. The first goal was changing the patterns of linear top-down communication that are so common in data work. patterns in which requesters communicate instructions to workers with the intermediation of the platform or the BPO, but don't allow any form of feedback from workers. So we wanted to break with that by reimagining forms of documentation that allow feedback loops and the active participation of different actors, especially the data workers. And the second goal was creating documentation not only for the purpose of transparency, as done by previous frameworks, but to foster reflexivity in terms of how tasks come to be and whose worldviews are encoded in them. This is a form of documentation that ultimately opens up paths for workers to intervene in production processes and to contest naturalized workflows and assumptions. The high-level findings and design considerations derived from this research can be summarized in 3 main points. First, documentation should reflect processes, not artifacts, and foster reflexivity as the data production process unfolds, and not just once the data set is already in use. Second, documentation is a communication medium. It should preserve workers' voices, communicate them back to the requesters, and transport information that helps both groups with their respective tasks. And finally, documentation should be integrated in data production workflows and be adaptable to different organizational needs. It shouldn't be something that is thrown on top of all the other work. There are at least 3 reasons why this form of participatory and collaborative documentation is important. First, documentation that takes place as the production process unfolds can be useful to reflect upon and flag undesirable issues in the data early on in the process. Second, and related, enabling an avenue for data workers to express concerns and provide feedback can significantly improve the quality of data sets. And third, documentation is sensitive to power. Expanding the view of documentation as a tool to empower data workers also implies expanding our understanding of AI ethics to consider labor conditions in AI supply chains. The paper discusses more interesting points, including the implications of designing boundary objects, such as documentation, with the participation of different actors, and a few reflections on the limitations and challenges of conducting participatory research with the intermediation of partner organizations. We invite you all to take a look at the paper if this sounds interesting. Thank you very much for watching. We look forward to hearing your comments.